Hey everyone, this is Marigal Ben Yaakov. It is November 16th on Thursday, 2023. Before I get started, please hit the like button and the subscribe button. This will help build up the channel, and YouTube will recognize me, and eventually if I build enough subscribers and likes, they'll start paying me because I'm bringing more traffic to YouTube. Anyway, so if you don't mind doing that, that'd be awesome. Anyway, today's topic, what I want to talk about is several things wrapped into once, but one big overall subject, and basically your health, and or to avoid health problems, or slightly avoiding health problems, and also kosher food, and also to discuss what is kosher food as well. And this is according to biblical Judaism, or the biblical text, according to the Old Testament, which we call the Tanakh, which is not old for us. It is living, and which is living and valid to this day. Anyway, let's start off with kosher animals. Let's start with the land animals. Now, the Torah itself does not mention one particular thing, which would make life a whole lot easier for those who are wanting to know what kosher and what animals are kosher for eating or consumption. And so the Bible, or the Torah, in Leviticus 11 and I believe Deuteronomy 14, I could be wrong. I'll put the correction right here if I am wrong. Anyway, it will basically say, as far as land animals go, it is animals that have a hoof that's completely divided. Like if you ever looked at a deer's foot, it has like two sides to it, where it's totally divided and separated. But they have two separate type little hoofs, and same with goats, cows, and things like that. So it's a hoof completely divided. And so the other criteria is they regurgitate their food and chew it and chew it and chew it and regurgitate and chew it and chew it and chew it, and they call it chewing the cud, and that's what that means. So they're basically coughing it up, chewing it again, swallowing it, coughing it up, chewing it again, and stuff like that. What the Torah does not say, which makes it easier, because if you were like hunting or out in the wilderness and you're like looking way, way down there, and you're kind of wondering, is that animal kosher, where it's good for me to eat according to the Bible, you have to get pretty dang close to look at his feet, if you just don't know already, or see how he's chewing. And so, like say for the pig, for example, if you see like these footprints and you see it's a hoof completely divided, you're like, oh, it might be kosher, or it is kosher. Or a pig has a split hoof, but it does not chew the cud. The camel is kind of similar. And this is what the Bible gets into. The camel chews the cud, but doesn't have a hoof. Rather, they have a two-toed padded foot. For lack of better words, it doesn't have a hoof. And so it's like it has toes. And so anyway, so the camel and what's related to the camel would be a llama and an alpaca. Those are related. Those three animals are related. So those are totally unkosher. And so because they chew the cud, but they don't have a split hoof, and they don't even have a hoof. So anyway, where the pig or swine and all the pig family, they have a split hoof, but they do not chew the cud. But to make life even better and easier to decipher whether or not an animal is kosher or not, especially like from the distance like this, is whether or not an animal has horns or not, which I don't know why the Torah doesn't even mention horns at all. But if an animal has horns, it's definitely is a kosher animal. And I put together a list of I put a list of like 53 animals, land animals, that I could muster up in my mind. 53 animals that are kosher, and they all have horns. So I'll give you an example of a few just off the top of my head without going into the list and writing it on paper. One would be like the cow, the goat, whether mountain goat or a farm goat, doesn't matter. Deer, ibex, would be a lamb, which is the same as sheep, or a ram. Excuse me, a pronghorn. Bongo, addax, if you've seen elk before, big old rack, or moose, impala, and so much more. One of my favorite animals is a bongo. It's just gorgeous to look at. So anyway, these animals all have horns, and they're all kosher. And so even the giraffe has little baby horns, and that is kosher. But do you really want to kill a giraffe just so you can eat it? So it'd be one thing if you had a farm and raised them. Anyway, that defines what a kosher animal is as far as land animals go. Now, as far as aquatic life, the Torah basically says, it basically forbids all aquatic life unless the creature or animal fits two criteria. One is it has to have fins covering its whole body. So take that back. I mixed it up. It has to have fins, and because there's animals, a lot of sea creatures have fins, but they don't meet this other criteria, which is they have to have scales all over their body. So like fish like bass, perch, and salmon, they have scales, and fins. So those are kosher to eat. However, and what I was going to say at the top of the video, some of the things I want to mention is the things that irk me in the Jewish community, especially not the Jewish community as a whole, but the rabbinical establishment, because they are only focusing on certain things, which is strictly 100% based on rabbinical tradition, not biblical tradition. Okay, and they'll fight and wrestle with you. Oh, blah 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 blah. And I don't care about oral law. Oral law is made up stuff that came far later, and where they didn't observe it before that. So there are things. And also, I gotta mention that there are things that render kosher food unkosher if something happens or doesn't fit another criteria. Say, for example, so I have a goat or a lamb, or have cattle on my property, and I want to kill one for dinner and put it in the deep freeze and things like that. Now, you gotta keep in mind, this is biblical Judaism, not modern day stuff. Where back then they didn't have refrigeration. So let's just stick to the biblical for a brief minute and how that might affect modern times. So some things are not, so some animals are rendered unkosher or not yet totally kosher for consumption yet. And so what does that mean? So in the Torah itself, it says you are not allowed to eat fat nor blood of an animal. That's point blank and pretty clear. So even if I kill a cow, I cannot eat it yet until all the blood is cooked out of it. Doesn't have to be well done and burnt and totally brown, but just right at the right stage where all the blood is cooked out. Okay? So hope I'm clear on that. So once all that is done or accomplished, then you could eat your beef or lamb or whatever the case is. And so now it's rendered kosher. But there's other things as well. Let's see if I could think of them at the top of my head. I don't know. Let's see if I could. What else would consider it unkosher? There's a certain law in Deuteronomy. It says, do not cook, I'll just put it right here where it's at. Anyway, it says, do not cook a kid. This is where the rabbinical establishment gets all fouled up. I really don't want to touch on the rabbinic aspect right now, but so let's just move on. I'll come back. Another thing that would render an animal, a kosher animal, unkosher is, or not acceptable to eat, is if, even if you're watching the animal, if it dies by itself, you cannot eat it. That renders this kosher animal now unkosher if it dies by itself. So you have to kill it yourself. And so another law is if the animal gets killed by a wild animal, like a lion, mountain lion, whatever this or that, whatever that might kill. And coyotes, or if it's not coyote, wild dog or whatever, you're not allowed to eat it. And so just it's rendered now unkosher. See, what else? Another one is, a lot of these things you'll see around the sacrifice commandments, but it's still, it must be applied, okay? So now this is where the refrigeration comes in, and the debate of maybe refrigeration, because they didn't have it in those days, but nonetheless, if I kill my cow for dinner and for me and my family, and or for the society around me or the town, if the meat is out for over 2 days, you cannot eat any more of it. That's it, no more. You can't eat it. If it's the third day already, you can't eat anymore. You just can't have it. So now, if it's at the third day, it's now rendered unkosher. You can't have it. Other ones, so that's that. So then we'll say, well, they didn't have refrigeration in those times. Well, maybe so, and that is very much true. But that's where your debate is the law from God, or if it's from man. Or you could say, well, because of refrigeration, God would now allow it if you freeze it or keep it cool the moment you slay it and butcher it up and immediately put it in the refrigerator or freezer to preserve it. Because what is the overall point? And this is another thing I want to touch in about the rabbis, and I'll do it in a second. But I'll say it, let's put it on a secular level, not a religious level. You're going to be condemned by our holy God. You know that, not the religious level, but on a secular level. The elders and sages of long ago looked at the overall society and asked the question when they see others or their own, you know, what is making or what has made the people sick and ill? And it is not thoroughly cooking it, which is why you don't eat meat with the blood still in it. Fat, don't. That was mostly a sacrificial stuff, because you have to put like these 7 animals, or several animals anyway. There's 7 sacrificial animals that go on the altar. I don't know if I can name them all, but there's let's see, or at least they're listed different, so it seems to be 7. And so you got the bull, you got the sheep, you got goat, and you got doves, you got pigeon, and okay, that's the 5 animals. The others are grain and a drink offering. I think that's the 7. So 5 animals and 2 other things that go on the altar. So, but of the fat is burned on the altar of those animals that have fat. But it says outright you must not eat the fat as well. So that part of the kosher animal you cannot eat, as I said, with the blood. Other things is what is defiled, you know. So like, say for example, if you have kosher meat sitting there in a house on, like, say it's dinner time and you're about to eat, and all of a sudden a loved one dies. Well, everything in the house is now considered unclean. Now this is where maybe a kosher oral law would come into effect, a kosher oral law, not a rabbinic one. Okay, if I'm in a house and the meat is in the house and someone dies, we're both unclean, the meat and me. And so I should be, by my ruling as a person who had a sect at one time, I would say if you are unclean and you are in that house already, you could eat that meat because you're one and the same. However, if you are outside of the house and you are clean, you cannot go in and have that meat, or someone bring the meat out to you. You can't eat that meat or you'll be unclean. And so you can't really go out of the way to be unclean. It's one thing to be unclean in some things, because that's what you got to do. But anyway, so that, like say, if you're outside of a house and someone died and there's meat in there that's exposed to the open air, that's now rendered unkosher for you, the clean person. And so, like say, during the time of a feast, for example, like Passover, that would be way off limits because you can't become unclean in general, and that meat would make you unclean. Let's see what else. Okay, this is where I want to talk about like the rabbinical establishment. There is a certain law that's very vividly clear, very vivid, clear, and in its particular wording, and it doesn't say anything more. Remember, don't add to the law of Moses and do not subtract from it. Just take it as it is, unless there is something that's really applicable to modern times, because they didn't have radios, cars, internet, and things like that. So, like say for Sabbath, just a offshoot for a minute. They didn't have cars on Sabbath. They had horses and donkeys and things like that. You're not allowed to ride your donkey or horse during the Sabbath and do certain things, and not allowed to kindle a fire during the Shabbat. Well, when you nor pick up anything that's unnecessary during the Shabbat. So you can't pick up your keys during the Shabbat. You can't open a car door because you don't live in it. It's not your home. I mean, it's one thing if it is your home, because you're homeless or something. But you can't open a car door, and you definitely can't turn it on because you're not allowed to kindle a fire, and that's what the engine does. You're creating a spark, and you're exploding the gasoline, and so the piston's moving, so you're able to go. So, anyway, blah, blah, blah. Getting back. So the Torah says would make it unkosher. It says, you shall not cook a kid. Kid is a goat. You shall not cook a kid in its mother's milk. That's all it says, nothing more, nothing less. And what's that referring to? It's kind of how I judge it as a guy who's just judging without any extra detail, because it's not spoken about, not read commentators, that came centuries later. There's nothing in the text itself that will give you the why, what for. So it does not say, it doesn't say this, and that's the whole point. It says, do not cook a kid in its mother's milk. It doesn't say, do not cook meat in milk. It doesn't say that. So you are allowed to cook meat in milk and have dairy with milk. Well, rabbinical Judaism which it should be rejected whole cloth, or a good 98% of it anyway, they run with it. Now, after Jesus was born and died, and time moved on, and the Mishnah was created by Judah HaNisi in like 190, 160, somewhere around there. Anyway, there was a certain rabbi, I can't think of his name right now, it's a 4-letter name, Erna or something like that. I don't remember his name. Anyway, I might be a vice versa with his son, but so I might mix it up. But give you the gist. He would not, I think it's this way, he would not eat, like if he had a glass of milk, he would not have beef till later in the day, because he was putting his own old tradition of, where it says do not cook a kid in his mother's milk, he was adding to the law where you cannot have milk and meat or dairy products and meat together. So he would have some meat of something or a glass of milk, and then so he wouldn't have meat until later. And so the son, or vice versa, took it a step further where, it's kind of baffling where a lot of the Jewish society will honor their rabbis almost like gods or angels, with a high honor, where they don't even grasp, like the Jewish society don't even grasp the hypocrisy of what I'm about to tell you. So the son ignores the custom of his dad and just takes it a step further. Not for safeguard, you could say it for safeguard, just in case. So if he had a glass of milk, he wouldn't have meat until the following day. He went that extreme. And so now, in Jewish culture, you'll have meat in one refrigerator and dairy in another refrigerator. And you can't have meat and dairy. So now rabbis will take it upon themselves to go to food factories or food processing plants or whatever, and put their dumb little K and their U with their circle and say, this facility is kosher, or it's good for Passover because there's no milk products, or this or that or whatever. And so they negate one aspect. Where I was going to say, this is what irks me. They'll just throw a K on there for kosher or whatever to make it so-called kosher for their people. This is not according to biblical Jews. This is according to the oral aspect, which should be this thrown out whole cloth. Anyway, they'll go to places and put a K on there simply because there's no dairy in there, or meat and dairy in there, or no meat in the area, and so they'll render it kosher. However, there's certain laws that also render all kosher food unkosher if something goes on. It's like, okay, during the time of Balaam, Balaam couldn't curse Israel, so because the Lord wouldn't allow it. Even though it's hard to do so, he went there to go curse him, and the Lord opened up his mouth and he spoke goodness for Israel. So, what did Balaam do? Because he wanted to be highly blessed by the pagan king of Moab, I believe it was Moab. So, what did he do? He says, well, if you really wanted to entice Israel, just sacrifice food to your gods and invite them to the feast and bring out all these girls and let them fornicate. And so that's what the people did, and that's how Israel fell, and that's why the God of Israel got mad, according to the text, because they ate food sacrificed to idols and were fornicating. So in other words, if an animal, kosher animal, is sacrificed to another god, or some non-Jew prays to, thank you so-and-so for this food, you can't eat it. That's according to biblical law. And so that renders that kosher animal now unkosher, not allowed to eat it. So there you go. And Paul talked about the New Testament. I don't want to focus on the New Testament today, but it's funny because Paul, being a so-called Pharisee, claimed to be one. He says it's okay to eat food sacrificed to idols because an idol is nothing. So anyway, that's what he said. So anyway, and you can't do that, so ignore him. So there's a few things that render kosher food unkosher. But what really irks me now, like I was saying, about the rabbinical establishment, they'll just put a K or U with a circle on food products that's not kosher at all. Because why do I say that? I have to say this up front. This is my standard according to the overall biblical text, what's being said and what's being done. So if you take the religious stuff out of the biblical text and see, like, okay, what are the elders or the sages doing? They're looking at the society at large and they're saying, what's making are tribes sick, or what will prevent them from getting sick. And so they pick animals with horns, the kosher animals, because they're all vegetarian. They don't eat each other, and they don't scavenge dead things and slop and junk. Where like a pig, for example, he's literally dead carcasses, even humans for that matter, if there's a dead human lying around, he eats manure and all this stuff. Dogs are the same thing. They'll eat their own manure, and they'll eat just nasty old stuff. Catfish, when it comes to aquatic life, they're not bottom feeders, eating just whatever's there. And so with the fish, yes, fish eat fish, but some fish are not like carcass eaters and things like that. And so the overall picture was them trying to keep the society healthy. And so if you bring that forward, like stop the wheels. If you bring that forward, the rabbinical establishment, when they put the K or U on stuff, they don't care about the overall health of you when they put that on there. They're only doing it because it fulfills a certain thing about do not cook a kid in some mother's milk, and they expanded that to milk and dairy together. Or so where in the future, where you might have meat, like say during Passover time. That's why they put kosher for Passover, because there's no milk product in there, okay? Or yeast involved, okay? When it comes to the Passover product. So, but in the overall picture, what irks me is what I have to say is this, because we live in the modern world. 200 years ago, every single food product, whether unclean or clean animal, was organic. It was 100% organic. Well, you don't have that now. They put so much hormones and stuff. They give them chemical food and things like that. And so the kosher, the kosher police are putting K and this is kosher on stuff that's totally poisonous, and they don't even care. They don't look at the overall picture. And this goes with all cooking products. So like say for example, you'll see K on stuff that's totally made with, some of the things in there are made with petroleum products. And so it's not organic. And so if you're going to keep the spirit of the law is for health, the overall health of society, you can't eat petroleum. You can't cook with petroleum products. You can't cook with chemical things, okay? And so, and to touch on stuff right for a minute, on I gotta say this about cooking, cookware and utensils and stuff. A lot of people use plastic. They'll go to the Dollar Tree or someplace or Walmart, and you go in the pots and pans sections, a lot of them are made with this non-stick material. That is a chemical. Now, they did away with Teflon some years ago, but it came out in the 30s, and Teflon is made with this really bad chemical that it literally stays in your body apparently forever. I don't know, according to the scientists. And so, so how is that kosher to cook in? So what you should deal with when it comes to your food is ancient stuff. Glass, ceramic, cast iron, and stainless steel, or just plain steel. You wash it out. And copper, for that matter. And like silver utensils as well. And way back in the day, if you're super rich, you have gold utensils, and that's good too. But now they're using all this non-stick stuff. They have utensils made out of petroleum products, all this plastic, and it leaches out into your food, and you're literally poisoning yourself and giving yourself extra problems. So to avoid potential problems, you should stay away from all non-stick products and anything made of petroleum, and read your labels. Like I said, if it's not organic, it shouldn't be labeled kosher. It's not kosher, period. So even if vegetables, GMO, are genetically modified, and they're doing that with grain, soybeans, all types of beans, lentils, corn, like as canola oil, canola, and sunflowers and squash. All of this, stay away from. It's all genetically modified. Why? So they could put pesticides, herbicides, fungicides all on the field. Well, they say, well, we wash it off. I called one wine company. This is before I even learned what the word organic even meant, because if I bought a product, and like say for rice, for example, if it has something else other than rice on the ingredients, I wouldn't buy it. So I would call a wine company and say, hey, do you use like anything like pesticides or herbicides? And the lady asked, this is here in Arkansas, in the winery here in Arkansas, the lady goes, yeah, we spray with 17 things, but we wash it all off thoroughly. I'm like, hello, it's just not on the surface. Once you water, it gets in the root system, and you're eating all that nastiness and poison, so you're cursing yourself. So grapes are fruit of the vine. So normally they'd be considered kosher, but because it's not organic, it's now rendered unkosher. That's my standard, and that's the overall spirit of the Torah. So if it's not organic, it's not kosher. Same way with your pots and pans and utensils. If it's not, if those things are not made with good quality stuff, all your food's going to be rendered unkosher. You shouldn't eat it because you're leaching poison into your body. And the Lord, or El Shaddai, wants you to be not just holy and upright in your religious walk, but upright and healthy as well, to take care of yourself and the society at large. He doesn't want leprosy people, cursed people, diseased people, cancerous people, and all this. He doesn't want any of that. He wants you to be set apart, upright, holy, pure, and whole. A whole body. So anyway, that's kind of my beef. So just stay away from non-stick stuff and petroleum stuff. They even make they even make vitamins from petroleum products, or your fertilizer from petroleum products. Dude, you burn your gas is made from petroleum. Why would you eat that stuff? If you put gas on like plants outside, like weeds, the whole area will die, and it's all tainted. So don't put that in your body. So anyway, watch out for that K and kosher label. Just because it has that label on there, it might fit one certain criteria, but it dismisses all the rest. And remember, it's based on rabbinical tradition. It's not the biblical way. You could have meat and dairy together, like a cheeseburger. Like there's these Israelis visiting from Israel, helping me move from San Francisco, and say, what would you like to eat? I like a burger, but not a cheeseburger though. I'm like, dude, I'm Jewish. I know that you're rabbinic and you go by that dumb rule. I said, me all day? I'll have a homemade organic cheeseburger all day because it's allowed, because I'm not cooking a kid in its mother's milk. So there you go. So watch out for rabbinical Judaism, because they are not they don't seek things for your well-being like the sages and elders long ago. So let me say this, since I'm making a video, okay? Just give you something to think about, because it talks about kosher. We're talking about kosher food and what's allowed and not allowed to be eaten. So in the kosher rules, we're not allowed to eat insects except for only a few of them, like a katydid, cricket, and grasshopper. And it might be some similar like to that. And the reason why is, well, I can't say the reason why, because some crickets actually eat other bugs. So if you eat the whole thing, you're eating the unkosher bug, without gutting and taking the guts out. So fish, for example, like say bass, they eat unkosher fish and frogs and whatever that might be around. And so you have to gut them. You just can't eat it whole, because you'll be eating the frog or whatever that might be in its belly. So some crickets eat actually other insects, which you're not allowed to eat. So, but fish you typically gut out and Don't worry about the gut contents. And so, but anyway, going back to the insects, is according to the Torah, bees, wasps, hornets, all considered unkosher, not allowed to eat them. However, the people back in the day who wrote this all down, which kind of tells you it's probably not of God, but of man, and you can see where they kind of showed a little favoritism to the bee, anyway. Bee is considered unkosher, not allowed to eat it. So, like, say, it's in a similar way, you would ask a question. I asked a rabbi this, trying to trick him, and I did. I go, can I eat the spit of a camel? Oh, no, you can't do that. It's unkosher from an unkosher animal. I said, okay, then why am I allowed to eat honey? What? What do you mean? And I said, because honey is made from a bee actually vomiting. He puts it in his stomach and he spits it out and blah, blah, blah through all his routine. That's how honey is made. So you're eating bee vomit, and a bee is considered unkosher according to the Bible. But all throughout the Torah and the Tanakh, everybody's eating honey because it's sweet. So they showed favoritism to honey because it doesn't get you sick. You know, they didn't render it unkosher because it doesn't render you sick. It tastes extremely good. They don't want to forbid that, you know, because that is the blessing of the gods, as they say in pagan culture. But anyway, honey is considered delicious and good in biblical culture. So there's a little contradiction there. And so I don't know if the people back in the day knew the science of honey, but it would be, if you were to take the biblical laws of kosher and unkosher strictly, honey would be totally 100% forbidden because it's made from the stomach enzymes of the bee. So, which is basically when they spit it up. So I find that interesting. But anyway, that's the beef today. But I want to go over here so you can see what I'm talking about. I'm going to flip this around. And I'm going outside my shop. And so, let's see, I got some non-stick pans. These are crude because I don't use them. So let me flip it up. This is a see, the outside is stainless steel. It's great. But on the inside, it's totally Teflon or this non-stick junk. And so this stuff is chemically made, and you should never ever cook your food in it, boil water in it, and just throw it away. This, however, is cast iron. And if you season this right, it will be non-stick, and if not better. So if you want to cook eggs or something in there, eggs will not stick to this if you season it right. So anyway, that's my spill today. So make sure you hit the like button and the subscribe button to help me out. And I hope you have a blessed evening, and thank you for watching. And sorry for rambling on. And I'll try to remember during the video to list all the kosher land animals that I came up with. I came up with like 53. All right, talk to you.